I'm Ryan Warner, senior host of Colorado Matters on Colorado Public Radio, and welcome to the Solution Studio at Metropolitan State University of Denver. I want to take the opportunity to thank Heidi G, the Republican nominee for governor, for being with us. Thank you, Heidi.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm happy to be here.
And I want to acknowledge our panel: 4 MSU Denver students, Julie Winans, Gabe Trujillo, Jessica Arguelles, and James Vargas. We thank them for their participation and the questions to come on thorny issues that face Colorado. Why don't we jump right in?
Sure, Ryan.
And hopefully find some solutions. November will mark the 100th anniversary of the Colorado River Compact. And as I think you know, the federal government is warning states they'll need to reduce water use by 15 to 30%. And this is a function of mismanagement, overuse, and extreme drought driven by climate change. So the question, Heidi G, is how will you work to reduce Colorado's water usage while ensuring that agriculture, our communities, tribes, the outdoor economy, that they can all thrive?
Yeah, it's such an important issue, Ryan. As I've been out on the campaign trail over the last year, I've really gotten to know farmers and ranchers and water experts. We've created a team of 27 water leaders from around the state that are knowledgeable about all the different aspects of our rivers and our storage projects, et cetera, and just challenge them. Like, how do we do this? How do we do better going forward so that we can grow, so that we can still have crops, so that we can honor the rights of people who've been here a very long time, but also look forward to the future. And we have to share our water with a lot of folks here in Colorado. So those water leaders have suggested that one of the key things we can do, of course, is focus on storage. We've got a lot of studies going on. We've got some big storage projects that are taking pretty long. Sometimes they take 20 years to get through.
A generation.
Yeah, a generation. And so working with the federal government, the state government, wherever we can push forward is critical. And having a collaborative approach and making sure that buy and dry, which is where a lot of farmers or ranchers are not forced, but they kind of get to the point where they can't produce, so they feel like they need to sell off their water rights. And I don't think that's the best thing for our communities, especially if we want great food produced. And then we've got to figure out how we can support the water needs of the Front Range, because our growth requires water. And so there's got to be this balance. So storage is number one. We've got to make sure we can store as much of the water as we can that's ours, protect what's rightly ours. We've got to work with the federal government and coordinate and cooperate to make sure that we can address our growth going forward. And of course, the Colorado River Compact is going to be negotiated. And so I think we've got to have a very strong stance that, Colorado needs to stand up for Colorado's water, what's rightly ours, and I will do my best to do that.
All right, so Heidi G will have an opportunity, as you've seen, to respond, and then we'll have follow-ups from our panelists. Let's move to those follow-ups now that you've laid out something of your vision for water. And we're going to start with Julie Winans, who is studying healthcare. Hi, Julie.
Hello, Noah, and thank you for being here, Heidi. In recent interviews and a little bit today, I've heard you say that you feel like there's a lot of water crisis solutions that are stalled in the planning phase. One of note is access to water reserves that are specifically legislatively created for Colorado tribal reservation use. And I'd like to know what you personally will do to greenlight clean drinking water to everyone on all Colorado reservations.
Well, thank you for the question. And I've had the honor to spend some time on the Ute Reservation outside of Durango and get to know some of the leaders there and listen to their concerns and their objections to some of the things that are happening, not just on water, but a lot of, about growth, about the economy, about their growth fund. That's very, very important to the tribe. So, I want to be a governor for all of Colorado, and I have such a heart and a passion for people around our state that are struggling on various issues. And so as a leader, I find the most important thing I can do is just listen and take in their concerns and try and collaborate and bring people together to have tough conversations about how to solve these issues. That's what I've done as an entrepreneur building Camp Bow Wow, or as a regent at the University of Colorado with my fellow regents or students and faculty. So a lot of it is just listening and being a good leader and bringing people together and trying to find compromise where we can.
Okay, on to a follow-up from Gabe Trujillo, who's studying psychology and Spanish.
Thanks, Gabe.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. And my question is, the Colorado River District General Manager, Andy Mueller, said that the scientists recommend the Colorado River only provides 9 million acre-feet of water since the river supply has been drastically decreasing. Since the river basin is split up between other states, how will you work with their leaders to decrease the amount of water being used overall?
Well, again, I think it's important to protect what's rightly ours, and storage will help with that because a lot of the water that we have rights to is flowing out of the state. But we've also got to find innovative ways to grow crops, to build houses, to landscape that don't require as much water, right? And so one of the most important things I can do is, again, listen to the ag community, the agriculture community, which is our second largest industry in the state of Colorado, and help them innovate, help them find different ways to grow crops that can reduce their needs for water, and then also find ways for the Front Range and the growing development on the Front Range, work with the different folks on the Western Slope specifically about how to share water and how to help each other rather than go against one another. We've had a lot of that going on lately. I don't think those projects are going in the right direction, so we've got to take a deep breath, understand that we're all neighbors, we all are Coloradans, and we all need the water to survive and thrive, but we've also got to share it with the other states too. So a lot of collaboration, a lot of listening, a lot of negotiation, and I will be a governor that will stand up to protect what's rightly ours.
Next up is Jessica Arguelles, who is a nursing student at MSUD.
Hi, Heidi. Knowing that you keep stating storage is number one, obviously, what other programs will you incorporate for natural water collection?
Well, storage projects, of course, are the most significant and impactful. But again, it goes back to innovation and looking at different ways to grow crops, looking at different ways to landscape, looking at different ways to provide water for growing housing developments. That's a key issue in affordable housing is, how do we make sure we have enough water so that we can grow housing units? We're very short on housing units right now. And again, it goes back to listening and leading and making sure that we're bringing people together rather than dividing them, and looking at the reality of our situation is we need to survive on less water. And so how can we all work together to do that? In fact, a lot of students are working on this issue too, and I've been so impressed with some of the projects and the initiatives that students are leading across the state around water. It's been one of the key ways I've learned about what we need to do. So I'm proud of you guys. You're doing great. You're a key part of the solution.
And a question now from James Vargas, who I'll say is in a relevant field given the forum, political science. Hi, James.
Hi. Thanks for being here, Heidi. So I believe when you're in a position of power, such as governor, you have to make decisions that are going to be difficult and not a lot of people are going to like. So when it comes to water, roughly 7% of our water is used for non-agricultural use. That goes for like lawns, golf courses, stuff like that. So that may not seem like a lot 'cause it's only 10%, but it counts for around 130 billion gallons of water. So what I'm wondering is, would you consider finding our conservation solutions such as reducing the amount of water used for lawns, golf courses, or are there any other solutions you believe would be pivotal in reducing the amount of water we use?
Yes, absolutely. I think innovation and technology is key to solving this problem, and also, finding different ways to decorate our lawns and making it, more accessible to use different tools and resources to build houses and to create communities so that they may not be as reliant on water, and also tapping into water needs that we're currently not, or water sources that we're not currently tapping into. A lot of that is tied up in red tape. I'm not saying that red tape isn't good in some ways because we've got to protect the environment, but we've also got to be able to tap into those resources and move that along. And so one of the things I say is I'd like to speed up the process and figure out where we can provide a little relief on red tape and regulation without hurting the environment or hurting the communities that are relying on the water.
All right, let's open it up to any follow-ups from any of our panelists.
Sure. I hear what you're saying about wanting to help regarding getting the indigenous communities in Colorado access to water. But if you could provide a little more specific information, are there any indigenous leaders on this 27 water leader panel that you were discussing? I know Utah just appointed their first indigenous member of the Colorado River Compact renegotiations. What can you do to ensure we're going to have that kind of representation in Colorado?
You have a minute, Heidi.
Okay. Well, I consider Shane Seibel, the head of the Growth Fund down there, a friend, and he's taught me a lot about the various issues the tribe is facing down there, water being one of them. So we just keep a conversation going, and I am studying up on it as much as I can. We've got to do better in bringing people together instead of dividing them. I think that's been the issue for the most part. As I talk to different people around the state, and the tribes as well, it's like they're not listening. I can't collaborate. I can't understand what they need or why they want, us to step back or not take this. And so one of the first things I'll do is convene not just my water leader board, but various leaders from around the state after I'm governor and say, all right, what are the key issues that are keeping us from working together and being collaborative? And let's try and figure out how to navigate a path forward as a new leader. And again, I can't say it enough. It goes back to listening, and I call it listening to exhaustion, like listening to the point where you deeply understand the issues and can, relate to the challenges that they're facing. And so I think that's a basic tenet of my kind of leadership philosophy. And so I don't want to come off with curt solutions that I can say I would put in place right away when I've got a lot to learn and I need to get to know people better and understand the issues they're facing before I come out swinging and say, hey, here's exactly what we're going to do, especially around water. It's so complicated. I mean, we've been fighting over water since 1876, right? So it's been a long history there.
Thank you, Julie Winans. Any other follow-up questions before we move on to our next topic? Seeing none, we'll continue in the Solutions studio with Heidi G, who is the Republican candidate for governor in Colorado. Heidi, the next nut to crack here with our panel. What will your administration do to address the crisis of mental illness, particularly access for youth in our communities? You have 5 minutes.
Oh, goodness, guys. When I first decided to run for governor, I had a pretty good idea of what the issues I would be addressing and what I would focus on. But as I traveled the state and really got to talk to people and understand the challenges they were facing, mental health was one of the key issues that I needed to learn about, that I needed to understand. So I did a lot of tours. I've done a lot of course, meetings and educating myself on the challenges that we're facing. And it's just heartbreaking what's happening with our children. We have one of the top suicide rates in the country for kids here in Colorado. We have one of the highest drug addiction rates for kids in Colorado. We've got homelessness that we're facing, and a lot of that ties to addiction and mental health issues. We've got a mental health system that I know a lot of good people are working to make it better, but it's pretty broken, especially the way it's funded. And finally, people have really lost hope. A lot of people I talk to have just lost hope. And they want to have hope for a bright future again. They want to believe that they can have opportunity again, that they can own a house, they can build a family, they can build a business. And there just seems to be a sense of loneliness and isolation, and probably related to COVID, but I think also related to screens and related to kind of the drug use in our society and how expensive it is to live here. So how do we solve it? Well, a couple key things. On homelessness, we can have compassion, but a little bit of tough love, where we've got to address the mental health and addiction issues that are keeping a lot of people on the streets. We don't have enough beds right now to take care of them, even if we did say, hey, we're going to take everyone off the streets and put them into facilities to help them with addiction or mental health.
And we'll get to go deeper into homelessness a bit later.
Okay, good. I'll kind of save that then. But addiction, that's a tough issue right now because fentanyl is one of the top demons we're facing here in Colorado and across the country. We have the second highest fentanyl death rate in the country right now. And I believe that's partly related to some policy issues. I believe it's related to a lot about what's happening at the southern border of Colorado and United States of America. And we've got to do what we can to stop the flow of fentanyl into our state. We've also got to change the way we fund mental health care. So right now, a lot of it is based on how many visits you're doing or per visit. We've got to make it outcome-based funding. So the outcome-based is that you're going to get better. You're going to get out of the system, right? To encourage healthcare providers to focus on success and what metrics are going to get people out of the system and back healthy again, not needing the care. That's something I've spoken to a lot of folks in the mental health space in Colorado about. We've got to do a massive telehealth effort. Right now in Colorado, in rural Colorado, there are definitely not enough mental health workers across the state to provide help for the farmers, the ranchers, the people across the state when it comes to small towns. Also in schools, we don't have the mental health care, the mental health counselors that we need in schools, so telehealth can help with that. But also providing certificate programs for teachers so that they can take a step farther and get a certificate or some kind of extra training so they can help on that front. Around the idea that we've lost community, we've lost connection. I'm putting together this idea called Reconnect Colorado, and what it's really about is getting people talking again, sharing dinner again, and going out and hiking again, and putting down the screens, having family dinners together, just reconnecting with our loved ones and building community again. And what can I do about that as governor? Well, I can certainly model it, I can talk about it, I can use statistics to talk to people about how screens affect our lives, how loneliness affects our lives, how isolation affects our lives. So getting back to community, changing the way we fund mental health through outcome-based funding, and again, listening to the leaders in this front who are facing on the front lines the issues that are keeping us from doing better, and making sure that we have a governor who talks a lot about it and makes it okay to talk about, which I do believe the current governor is doing, but I just want to continue that and make sure it's a top issue that we address here in Colorado.
And let's take some follow-ups then from our panel. We certainly have some young people represented. All 4 of our panelists are first-generation college students. They are juggling a lot. They know what it is to have stress and pressure. And why don't we start with Gabe Trujillo?
Awesome. So obviously, mental health is a topic that you're very, very focused on and stuff. As you said right now, like treatment beds are part of a plan. I've also read how outcome-based funding models, like you said as well, and mobile response units and stuff are also part of your potential plan and stuff to better the tragic teen suicide rates that Colorado is facing as a crisis, and then just mental health and overall and stuff. But what will you do to ensure that there is equal and equitable access to these services and prevention services for low-income communities and rural areas?
Well, yesterday we launched a program called Spark, our Community Spark program, which is for urban communities, specifically Hispanic and African American communities, to provide access to homeownership, access to entrepreneurship or starting small businesses, access to education opportunities, and access to family care, whether it's helping care for a parent or helping care for a child, if you're trying to work 2 jobs and figure out how to make it work. So we launched that program yesterday. We also are focused on education. So one of Danny and I's big goals is to do everything we can to make sure every child can read by the end of 3rd grade. That's tied to a lot of issues around mental health, around success in your family, success in society. You're 4 times more likely to drop out of high school if you can't read by the end of 3rd grade. And one of the issues that's 95% of our kids in Denver, the Hispanic and African American kids, can't read at grade level. So it's a huge issue. So education, opportunity, and just making sure that we have the resources to help people thrive in Colorado.
Gabe, thank you. All right, our next question comes from Jessica Arguelles. Hi, Jessica.
Hi. All right, so it looks like you had stated that you don't believe in the burden of mental health care falling onto schools since they're not in the position to do so or kind of help out or anything like that. What do you suggest for the youth struggling with mental health? Why wouldn't you fund it since there's an obvious big problem going on within the youth?
Yeah, I certainly misspoke if that's what was said. I absolutely know we need to partner with the schools to provide mental health services. What I may have said is that we don't have the capability to do it right now. Our mental health workers in the schools are overwhelmed right now with threat assessments and they also do career counseling and just the number of students that they have to serve. So at CU as a regent, one of the ideas I put forward was to create a simple certificate, not simple as in getting it, but simple meaning there's not a lot of red tape. You can get a certificate within a year if you're a teacher, and then you can provide mental health support as a counselor in the school on a part-time basis in addition to doing your teaching job. A lot of teachers have said they really want that. Also leaning on the community support structure that's in place, say in Delta, Colorado or Cortez, Colorado, making sure that if there are mental health workers there who want to help and support kids in school, that we can do that and make it easier for that to happen without a lot of training or extra education.
I'll have to play the time cop here.
Sorry, Ryan.
Don't
I'm
be
super
sorry.
passionate about this, so
we're
I'll keep
following
talking.
the format. Yes, but there's plenty room for more follow-ups on this important question of mental health. And the next one is from James Vodius.
So, as a student, I talk to a lot of other students who are going through a lot, and many of the reasons they feel like they have mental illness is because of mental exhaustion. They're constantly juggling so many things. They're trying to go to school full time and get good grades, trying to go to work full time and pay their rent, their necessities, even raise children if they have them. So many students just feel like they have too much. They're juggling, and it leads to that mental exhaustion, which leads them to think like, is school really for me? Am I really worth this? All that kind of stuff. So my question for you is, what will your administration do to reduce the amount of stress and baggage that students feel like they have?
Yeah, that's part of the Reconnect Colorado idea, is to provide ideas, tips, resources for young people, all of Colorado, to better connect with each other, to build friendship, to build community, to build camaraderie, and to build more community, generally speaking, as a state, but also in local cities and counties. Because right now, people, like I said, are feeling very isolated and alone. So anything I can do to model that as governor and to talk about my own challenges with my family and the stress that I deal with every day, and just be a model for speaking up about it, making it okay to say when you have a problem or you need help, and providing resources and attention on that.
Julie Winans, on the question of mental health and especially for young people.
Sure. I really appreciate your time and presence today. It means a lot that you would be here. And I just kind of wanted to circle back a little bit to Gabe's question. And could you elaborate a little more on equity and distribution of your plans, not regarding specifically just races, but how are you going to incorporate that with the uninsured, the underinsured, different economic classes? It's such a wide word, equity, diversity.
Yes, it is, and we're certainly not there yet. We have not done what we need to do. At CU, in our communities, in the various businesses I've been involved with, the most important thing we can do for equity, and I believe it's the civil rights issue of our time, is education, and making sure that every child gets an education that gives them the opportunity to live the American dream, just like I got to, and many of my, my community members do. So getting the resources and making sure that that our kids can read by the end of 3rd grade is critical to that. Also, through our Spark program, we're very focused on providing opportunity, home ownership, and the ability to start and run a small business to create wealth. That's also very important and something we've been working very diligently on, Danny and myself and some other folks. And would encourage people to go to the website and check it out, which should be up in the next day or two, but the video about our press conference should be up by now, so.
Any follow-ups from our panel?
Sure. I would like to jump in there. You've spoken quite a bit about your solutions being outcome-based, which is a really slippery slope. You're using words like get better and success regarding addiction. How are you taking into account relapses and the whole journey of addiction as opposed to alienating like the educational system and testing scores?
Well, you can't manage what you don't measure. So you've got to have metrics that you follow, that you use. When I toured Step Denver, we talked about this and what did success look like. And it's not, everybody gets better and there's no problems in the future. It's doing a little bit better, figuring out how to tweak the system or the treatment just a little bit to make it better and better. And looking for those bright lights where things are working and they are making progress, and supporting those organizations or those efforts. Right now, we spend between $50,000 and $100,000 per homeless person in the city and county of Denver. And I don't know that we're moving the needle in the right direction. Homelessness has increased by about 1/3 in the last couple of years. So let's take a look at what's working and move more resources to what's working, and perhaps pull back on places where it's not. I mean, people are hurting right now, and it's hard to spend a lot of money on an issue, whether it's mental health or homelessness, and not be able to track what's working and what's not. That's the business part of me. But of course, you've got to do it with compassion and empathy and understand that numbers don't tell the whole story. So.
Well, you have provided the perfect segue because our third issue in the Solution Studio has to do with homelessness, Heidi G. How will you address the issue of homelessness in Colorado, specifically reducing the homeless population along the Front Range by the end of a first term, say 2026? And do you have a percentage goal that you'd like to reduce the homeless population by?
Well, it's one of the top issues I hear about on the campaign trail. And it's not just Denver, it's Durango, it's Grand Junction, it's La Junta. And it goes back to the isolation and loneliness that a lot of people are feeling now, along with the addiction issue, and fentanyl plays onto that too. So I want to have compassion, but I want to have some tough love, because I don't think it's also fair to the small business owner or the young mom who has 2 kids and wants to let them go out in the yard to play, and she can't because there's an encampment or needles or something going on out front. So I like the idea of care courts. It's something I've been studying in certain cities around the country, and it's where a judge is trained very intently on how to address addiction and the criminal aspect as well. If you commit a crime or you're revived by Narcan, you go in front of a care court and they decide if you go get rehab or if you need to go to jail. Now, what we've got to do is take a step back and provide our jails and prisons resources to help people with mental health and addiction, because right now they don't have that. And also, we've got to have more beds and more treatment facilities. One idea is to integrate emergency mental health care into urgent cares or healthcare facilities around the city and give them more robust tools and resources to address urgent mental health matters. I like the STAR bands. I think that's a great way to do it, to take kind of the law enforcement angle a step back and provide emotional support and someone who's trained in dealing with crisis, along with the mental or the law enforcement side. So I think there's some good models out there, but we've got to be willing to try a lot of things and be willing to fail a little bit, because we've got to push the envelope so hard to make sure that we're doing everything we can to address this issue. So I'm an entrepreneur. I've always been taught, the best solutions come out of trying new things and being innovative and not being afraid to try some things that aren't going to work in order to get the things that do work.
We'll take follow-ups now, and we'll start with Gabe Trujillo.
Awesome. Cool. So, with inflation drastically raising the price of rent, and more families becoming at risk for being unhoused and stuff, and as well as resources becoming scarce because more people are needing them and stuff, what solutions would you put in place for prevention, for prevention?
Well, there's a couple things we need to do is to help people thrive, right? And so I have a very different approach than the current governor around reducing taxes, fees, regulations to unleash the job creators or the small business owners so they can hire more people, they can pay people more, and produce products and services, right? Also, it goes back to education and making sure that every child gets a good education so they have the opportunity to thrive and have a successful life after high school or if they want to go to college too. So education, the economy, and of course, addressing the skyrocketing crime we're seeing in Colorado, because people can't thrive if their car is being stolen or if they're being attacked or their house is being broken into. That's a fundamental part of taking care of our communities and society, is cleaning up the crime problem.
Jessica Arguelles.
With Denver's new program providing $1,000 per month for the homeless, say it were proven to work, the outcome was great, will you, as governor, expand it to the whole state, to other towns, cities, and all that?
I wish that they had kept that program using private dollars. And if you're going to, I admire them trying this. I'd like to see the numbers and see how it goes. But I think that it should be left to charities, communities, churches, nonprofits to do that work before we really know it works, and we would invest tax dollars on that program.
All right, and let's take a follow-up question from James Vargas.
So you've obviously talked about a lot of ways to battle homelessness is through combating drug use. So my question for current people who are already, homeless and may not have drug use, what can you as a governor and us as a community do to, rehabilitate and reintroduce these people back into society?
You mean folks that don't have mental health or drug addiction issues?
Maybe they lost their, jobs because of the pandemic or something, and they just now they're houseless and, they're not getting those opportunities that they once had because they,
Well, there's some great organizations that are doing a lot of work to help those folks. From talking to the folks that work in the homelessness area, they said our city and counties are doing pretty well on that front. It's more that their challenge is with the folks that do have mental health and addiction issues. But here's what I'd say. That goes back to having a thriving economy and neighborhoods that are safe and kids that can get a great education. If you can do those things and focus on kids and crime and the cost of living, I think that's the best approach in unleashing our economy, which right now we've got 15.6% inflation here in Colorado since Biden took office, and people are hurting. They can't afford gas, groceries, school supplies. And so getting back to a sense where people can afford to live again is really critical, and doing all I can to make sure that we address that affordability factor.
Julie Winans?
Hello again. Specifically regarding our unhoused Indigenous relatives, in Denver, there was a camp that was placed strategically close to resources. It was taken down by the city. There was another Indigenous camp that was located in downtown Denver that burned down last week. And since we're all on Native land, I'm wanting to know what you're going to do specifically regarding this community to help them.
Well, I don't think there's anything compassionate about letting people live on the streets. I mean, that fire was a tragedy. And if they had good housing or other options or shelters that they could live in, that wouldn't have happened, right? And so again, it goes back to having compassion. And I have a different approach. I don't think allowing people or letting people live on the streets is compassionate. I think we can do much better, and we will, by providing more housing, by making sure that the programs that are funded work well and we hold them accountable for getting good results, and making sure that we give kids a good education, get the economy thriving, and have a healthy mental health system that can address addiction and the mental health issues that a lot of folks are facing here in Colorado.
More follow-ups? Yes, go ahead. Gabe.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. So I love your response about education, economy, and crime. I think those are three great areas to focus on. I do agree, someone won't have time to be fine and stuff if their car's getting broken into. So my question is, these things take time. How about, the families that are in immediate need? Like the mom who might lose her house and stuff in 2 weeks because she can't pay the rent.
Well, again, I'm a mom of four. I've been in the community for a long time trying to help address some of these issues, whether it was my charity, Moms Fight Back, that I started, helping moms that are really struggling, or the Fight Back Foundation, encouraging entrepreneurs to solve tough social issues our kids are facing, or being a regent at the University of Colorado, which is a big part of the community, CU Anschutz and CU Denver, and our partnership with Metro State, of course. So I think it goes back again to making sure we have a thriving economy and that people have access to resources to help them if they're struggling right now. We've got some great nonprofits and charities that do wonderful work on that front. And of course, our state and city governments can help as well. So I'd need to know specifically more the challenges that we're facing and what programs we have that are accessible that they can use. But if we don't take care of the most vulnerable in our society, then it's not a very bright future for Colorado or our children and grandchildren. That's why I'm running, you guys. I'm very worried about Colorado. I want to make sure our kids and grandkids have a bright future ahead, and so do you. And that's my passion. So as a mom, as a community leader, and as an entrepreneur, I think we can do a lot better.
Further follow-ups on the question of homelessness? Yes, go ahead, James.
So sorry if you already answered this and I just missed it, but I'm kind of curious as to one of the biggest reasons a lot of people can't even afford housing is it's expensive here in Colorado. And I have a family who live in Michigan, and it's, the job that my mom does here she could buy a full-on house out in Michigan. So my question is, how will you work to find ways to reduce the cost of housing so more people can actually afford a home?
Yeah, it's a huge issue. And I've been digging in, and one of the key reasons of housing is so affordable is a fourth of the cost of new housing is regulatory.
Or unaffordable.
Yeah, unaffordable. And we've got to take a step back. We've got to make sure that the regulations we have in place aren't overburdensome or stopping new development here. We've got to create an innovative sense of adventure almost around housing. Like, how do we do things differently? How do we look towards the future of redeveloping old retail sites or looking at old malls that need to be redeveloped? Or, I mean, how do we make it kind of cool and available to live in community housing where, everybody has a common kitchen, and then you kind of have offshoot facilities or places where people go to sleep at night. There's lots of really creative, neat things happening around the country. And so my job as governor is to inspire local municipalities and communities to look at different options. And then if I have some funds that I can incentivize them to do that, great. But a lot of this is local. And then we've got to make sure we have the water that they can develop and grow, and that
Just a few seconds.
and that insurance isn't too hefty on developers so that they want to stay and develop here and grow and build.
Further follow-ups on housing and homelessness before we go? All right. Thanks to our panelists. Heidi G, Republican candidate for governor in Colorado. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan. I
It was
appreciate it.
nice to spend some time
Thanks
with
all
you.
of you.
This Solution Studio is a project of the MSU Denver Institute for Public Service in partnership with the Colorado Latino Leadership, Advocacy, and Research Organization, the Colorado League of Women Voters, and New Voice Strategies. Thanks for spending time with us. I'm Ryan Warner from Colorado Public Radio. I should have ended with go vote. Yeah.
It's okay. If they're watching this, they're probably.
That's right. They're an engaged people.
Yes.